The storm outside raged like a living thing, tearing across the dead planet's surface. Lightning flashed across the ruined wasteland, revealing broken towers and the bones of machines that had long since stopped working. Amid the chaos, one figure pressed forward. His name was Daniel, a lone explorer who had taken jobs others refused. Tonight his mission had led him to the husk of a ship that no human had ever walked inside before. The ship loomed above him, buried halfway into the crust of the world. Its metal was blackened with centuries of dust and storms, but it still looked alive as if it had only fallen yesterday. Lights flickered faintly along its hull, like dying stars that refused to go out. Every step Daniel took echoed on the ancient ramp as he entered, his boots meeting alien steel that hummed faintly beneath his weight. Inside, silence ruled. Dust floated through beams of pale light that filtered in from cracks in the ship's hull. Long tunnels stretched into darkness, with walls curved and ribbed like the inside of some colossal beast. Strange carvings ran across the panels, symbols that twisted and moved if he looked at them too long. Daniel steadied his breath. He had walked through many alien ruins before, but something about this place made his chest heavy, as if the air itself remembered pain. He pushed deeper into the ship, his flashlight sweeping over broken consoles and shattered glass. In the distance, something shifted, a faint clatter too deliberate to be the wind. His hand tightened on his weapon, though a voice inside whispered it would not help him here. He moved carefully, each step slower than the last, until the corridor opened into a vast chamber. The chamber stretched like a cathedral, its ceiling lost in shadow. Great chains hung down, rusted and clinking faintly as the air moved. Strange pods lined the walls, their surfaces cracked and fogged. He moved closer, to one, brushing the dust away, and froze. Inside was a skeleton, twisted and long, its jaw open in a silent scream. The others held the same fate, alien remains preserved for centuries in their cages. That was when he heard it. A laugh. It was soft at first, almost like the creak of the ship settling, but then it grew. A woman's laugh, low, sharp, echoing from the shadows. Daniel's blood ran cold as the sound slid around him, bouncing off the curved walls until it seemed to come from everywhere. He turned, his light jerking across the room, searching for the source. "You're late," the voice said. It was smooth, almost mocking. "The last one came centuries ago. I ate him." The words froze him in place. He raised his light higher, and in the shadows between two pods he saw movement. A figure stepped forward. She was tall, her skin smooth and shimmering with a faint blue glow. Her eyes burned like molten gold, piercing through the dark. She smiled, showing teeth too sharp to belong to anything human. Daniel's heart pounded. His instincts screamed at him to flee, yet his legs would not obey. The alien woman tilted her head, strands of dark hair sliding across her shoulders. She wore something that shimmered like liquid metal, wrapping her form with alien grace. "Another human," she said, her voice both curious and amused. "Do you think you will escape where the others did not?" Daniel swallowed hard, forcing his voice out. "I'm not here to die." Her smile widened, her laugh rising again, filling the chamber like thunder. "Then perhaps you are here to amuse me." The sound of her laughter lingered in the air, a promise of danger wrapped in beauty, and Daniel realized this was no ordinary ruin. This ship was not empty. It had been waiting, and now it had found him. Daniel's breath echoed inside his helmet as he kept the beam of his flashlight steady on the alien woman. She stood perfectly still, except for the faint rise of her chest as though she was savoring his fear. The golden glow of her eyes pierced through the dusty air, following every tiny movement he made. The silence after her laughter was worse than the sound itself. It was heavy, pressing down on him, daring him to speak first. Daniel tightened his grip on his weapon, though deep inside he knew it would be useless. If she had lived here for centuries feeding on those who entered, she was far beyond the reach of human steel or fire. "What are you?" he asked finally, his voice breaking the silence. Her head tilted and she stepped closer, her feet making no sound against the metallic floor. As she entered the pale circle of his light, her form became clearer. Her skin shimmered like smooth stone, faint veins of light moving under the surface as if her blood itself glowed. The suit she wore clung to her body like a living shadow, patterns shifting across it in ways he couldn't understand. "I was a queen once," she said softly, her voice carrying strange echoes as though the ship itself spoke with her. "My throne was this vessel. My empire spanned stars you have never seen. And then war came. Fire. Betrayal. Death." Her smile returned, sharp and cruel. "But death never claimed me. I endured. And when the void tried to starve me, I learned how to feed." Daniel felt his skin crawl. "On humans?" "On anything foolish enough to wander inside," she said, her voice curling around him like smoke. "But yes, there were humans. Brave, curious, arrogant humans. They thought they could master what they did, not understand. I showed them the truth." Her golden eyes flared brighter, and Daniel's stomach turned as he imagined what her words meant. He fought to steady himself, forcing his mind away from the images. "You're lying," he said. Her laughter returned, softer this time, almost playful. "Am I? Why don't you look around? Do you think these bones belong only to my kind?" Daniel turned his light toward the cracked pods once more, his stomach tightening as he examined the remains inside. He realized some of them were not as long and alien as the first skeleton he'd seen. Some were shorter. Some had skulls not unlike his own. His throat tightened as the awful truth settled in. She wasn't lying. Humans had been here before, and none had left alive. He turned back quickly, but she was gone. The spot where she had stood was empty, only shadows stretching in every direction. Daniel's pulse hammered in his ears. He swung his light desperately across the room, searching. The chains swayed faintly, though no wind stirred. "You feel it now." Her voice whispered close, though he saw nothing. "The walls themselves are alive. This ship is mine, and you are inside it. Do you think light will save you?" The flashlight flickered. He smacked it against his palm, cursing under his breath as the beam sputtered. For a moment, the room was plunged into pure darkness, and in that moment, he felt breath against his ear. Warm, inhuman. The light flared back, and she was there again, just inches away. Her smile was wide, her sharp teeth gleaming as she leaned close enough for him to see faint scars etched across her cheekbones. "You are not like the others," she said. "They screamed too quickly. But you stand still. You face me. Why?" Daniel forced himself not to step back, though his instincts screamed for him to run. "Because I don't scare easy." Her eyes searched his face for a long moment, then narrowed with interest. The cruel smile softened, replaced by something strange. Amusement. Curiosity. "Good," she said. "Then you might last longer." Her laughter rose again, shaking the walls as the chains rattled, and Daniel realized with growing dread that his fight for survival had only just begun. Daniel's legs felt heavy as he stood in that chamber, the alien woman's laughter echoing in his bones. Every instinct screamed that he was trapped, yet something about her words kept him rooted. She was studying him, as though he were not, prey but a puzzle she had waited centuries to solve. The glow of her golden eyes flickered like twin fires as she moved past him, circling slowly. Her presence was overwhelming, not just physical but something deeper. The air thickened when she drew near, as if the ship itself responded to her. "You walk into my grave," she said softly, trailing a hand along one of the broken pods. Her fingers traced the glass, and it pulsed faintly beneath her touch. "Yet you do not tremble. Do you not understand? This place has swallowed men whole, warriors, scholars, thieves. None left alive." Daniel swallowed hard but kept his voice steady. "Maybe I'm different." She laughed again, but this time it wasn't cruel. It was low, almost thoughtful. "Different, yes. I see something in you. Not fear, Not yet. Perhaps that is why the ship let you inside. Her words unsettled him. The ship let me? She turned toward him, her dark hair falling across her glowing skin, her eyes blazing brighter. Do you think this vessel is just metal and bone? No, it is alive, bound to me. It hungers as I do. The chains rattled above, and the floor hummed faintly as if answering her. Daniel's jaw tightened. He forced himself to glance around, noting every shadow, every exit, though deep inside he doubted there was one. What do you want from me? He asked. Her gaze softened, and for a brief moment, she almost looked human. I want to know if you can entertain me. If you are worthy of more than just flesh. She stepped closer, so close he could see the faint cracks in her skin glowing like fire beneath stone. Tell me, human, why do you come to places like this? Why risk your fragile life in forgotten tombs? Daniel met her eyes. Because someone has to. If we don't go forward, we die sitting still. Humans don't survive by hiding. Her expression shifted. The cruel amusement melted into something more dangerous. Curiosity. She leaned closer, her voice a whisper. Then show me. Show me what makes your kind so hard to kill. Before he could reply, the floor beneath them shifted. The chamber groaned, lights along the walls flaring to life. Dust fell from the ceiling as machinery that had been silent for centuries began to stir. The pods rattled, chains clanking as if the entire ship had awakened at her command. Daniel stumbled back, lifting his weapon, but she only smiled wider. Do you hear it? The ship remembers you now. It remembers your kind. From the shadows, a shape moved, then another. The pods that had once held skeletons hissed and cracked open. Figures stumbled out, their forms twisted, part flesh and part machine, their eyes glowing faintly with the same golden fire as hers. Daniel's heart pounded. What are they? Remnants, she said proudly. Pieces of those who came before. They belong to me now. The creatures lurched forward, their movement stiff but powerful, metal claws scraping against the floor. Daniel raised his weapon, sweat running down his temple. He knew this was no ordinary ruin. This was a trap, carefully preserved, waiting for the next victim. The woman's laughter filled the chamber once again as the creatures closed in. Now, human, let us see if you are different. Daniel's pulse hammered in his ears as the first of the remnants lunged toward him, its jaws snapping open with an unnatural shriek. The first remnant lunged at Daniel with a screech that rattled the chamber. Its body was half flesh and half machine, wires twitching like nerves under torn skin, its metal claws sparking as they scraped against the floor. Daniel fired his weapon. The blast struck its chest, knocking it back, but the thing rose again, smoke curling from the wound as if pain meant nothing. Daniel swore under his breath. The ship's echoes made it impossible to tell how many were closing in. His light darted across the chamber, showing figures dragging themselves from pods, their eyes glowing faintly like the alien woman's. She stood at the center, watching, him with arms folded, golden eyes burning brighter with every movement of her creatures. Her laughter was gone now. Instead, she studied him with fascination, as though this battle was not for survival but a test. Daniel ducked as another remnant swung its claws, the strikes smashing into the wall and showering sparks. He rolled across the floor, came up on one knee and fired again, this time at the creature's head. The blast tore through its skull, dropping it instantly. The smell of burning flesh filled the chamber. More came. 3, 4, maybe more. They moved like predators, circling, forcing him back toward the broken pods. Daniel's weapon whined as its charge ran low. He gritted his teeth, firing in controlled bursts, each shot echoing through the massive hall. One fell. Another stumbled, but rose again, dragging itself forward despite the hole in its chest. He had faced pirates, mercenaries, and wild creatures on forgotten worlds, but nothing like this. These things did not stop, they did not fear. They only obeyed. Is this how you survive? Daniel shouted, backing away as he reloaded. His voice carried anger now, defiance. Hiding behind broken corpses? The alien woman tilted her head, her smile faint but dangerous. I do not hide. I command. They are my will, fragments of my hunger. Do you see now, human? This ship is more than metal. It is memory, and you fight its memory. Daniel's back hit a wall. Two remnants came. At once, he swung his weapon like a club, smashing one across the jaw, then shot the other point blank. Sparks and gore sprayed the air. He pushed forward, breaking the circle, forcing them to regroup. His chest heaved with each breath. Sweat ran into his eyes, but he refused to falter. He moved with sharp, brutal precision, wasting no movement. Every strike, every shot carried desperation, but also skill. For a moment, he forgot the fear. He forgot the alien woman's gaze. His mind sharpened, his body reacting faster than thought, like instinct buried deep in his blood. He fought not just to live, but to prove that humans did not bow even in the jaws of death. The remnants hesitated. It was subtle, but Daniel saw it. Their movements slowed, as if the ship itself was uncertain. He pressed harder, seizing the moment, tearing through them with a surge of rage and resolve. When the last one fell, twitching and sparking on the floor, Daniel stood over it, chest rising and falling, his weapon heavy in his hand. Smoke curled in the air. The chamber fell silent once more, broken only by the faint hum of the ship. The alien woman clapped slowly. The sound echoed like thunder in the vast hall. Her golden eyes glowed brighter, her smile wide and unreadable. Impressive, she said softly. You lasted longer than I expected. Perhaps you are not like the others after all. Daniel raised, his weapon toward her, sweat dripping from his brow. I'm not your prey. She stepped closer, unfazed by the barrel aimed at her chest. Her smile deepened, and her voice dropped to a whisper that carried through the chamber. No, she said. You may be something else. Daniel kept his weapon steady, the barrel aimed at the alien woman's chest. Her glowing eyes never blinked, never faltered. She stood calm in the middle of the ruined chamber, surrounded by the broken remains of her creatures, as if the slaughter had only entertained her. You fight well, she said, her voice smooth and steady, but fighting alone will not save you. The ship does not forgive. It remembers, and it will test you again. Daniel's jaw tightened. Let it try. She tilted her head, amused at his defiance. So bold, so certain. Humans always think their strength lies in steel and fire. But that is not where the true war is fought. The war is in here. She touched her temple with a single glowing finger. Mind against mind. Will against will. Before Daniel could respond, the air shifted. The walls rippled faintly, the strange carvings glowing brighter. The chamber darkened as though the ship itself drew in light. His vision blurred, and for a heartbeat, he thought the floor tilted beneath his feet. What are you doing? He growled, forcing his balance. She smiled. I am showing you the ship. I am showing you the memory you chose to walk into. The chains above clanged, echoing like war drums. The chamber twisted around him, the walls stretching and folding into shapes that made no sense. For a moment, Daniel saw not a ruin, but a living vessel in its prime. He stood in a great hall filled with light and alien soldiers kneeling before a throne. Upon the throne sat the same woman, younger, more radiant, her golden eyes shining with pride and power. The vision shifted again. Fire, explosions. The soldiers lay dead, their bodies burned and torn. The woman screamed, her crown falling from her head, her ship breaking apart. Shadows swallowed everything, leaving only her voice raw with fury. Daniel stumbled, his head pounding. He squeezed his eyes shut and forced the images back. When he opened them, the chamber was as it had been. Broken pods, rusted chains, the woman standing before him. But the pounding in his skull told him it had not been a dream. You felt it, she whispered, stepping closer. The war that ended me, the betrayal that left me here. Do you understand now? This ship does not die. It carries memory like scars, and those who enter must face it. Daniel's weapon wavered slightly in his grip. He steadied it again, refusing to give her the satisfaction of seeing weakness. I don't care about your past. I only care about getting out alive. Her smile sharpened. Then you must win. Not against me, but against the ship itself. The floor beneath them trembled. A deep groan shook the walls as new doors opened along the chamber. Beyond them stretched corridors lined with shifting lights, the sound of whispers crawling from the darkness. Daniel glanced toward the doors, then back to her. What happens if I refuse? You don't refuse, she said simply. You move forward, or you are consumed. The whispers grew louder. Daniel took a slow breath. His body ached from the fight, but his mind burned with stubborn resolve. He had come too far to turn back now. He lowered his weapon slightly, but never took his eyes off her. If this ship wants to test me, it'll learn the same lesson your pets did. Her laughter returned, soft and melodic this time. Good. Show me, human, show me the will of your kind. Daniel stepped toward the corridor, the shadows curling as though alive, waiting for him. Every instinct warned him it was a trap, but he kept moving, his boots echoing against the alien steel. Behind him, her voice followed like a whisper of fire. Remember, you are not alone in there. The ship remembers everything, and it will try to make you forget who you are. Daniel clenched his jaw, tightened his grip on his weapon, and walked into the dark corridor, ready to face whatever memory the ship would throw at him next. The corridor swallowed Daniel whole as he stepped inside. The walls seemed to breathe, shifting like the ribs of some great beast. Strange lights pulsed faintly under the metal, beating like a heart. Each step echoed too loud, as if the ship wanted him to know he was trespassing. He kept his weapon raised, his flashlight cutting through the dark, but the beam bent strangely, curving with the walls, making distance impossible to judge. Whispers curled along the edges of his hearing, rising and falling like a tide of voices. Then he saw something that froze him. A figure. It stood at the far end of the corridor, half hidden in shadow. For a moment, Daniel thought it was another remnant, but the shape was wrong, smaller, familiar. The figure stepped forward and Daniel's heart lurched. It was a man in a torn Earth uniform, dust covering his shoulders. His eyes were hollow, but his face was unmistakable. Captain?
Reyes?
Daniel whispered. Reyes had been his commander years ago, lost on a mission that had ended in fire and blood. Daniel had seen him die. Yet here he was, standing in the middle of an alien ship. You left me, Reyes said, his voice low, filled with accusation. We were brothers and you left me to burn. Daniel's grip on his weapon tightened. He shook his head slowly. No, that wasn't how it happened. You gave the order. You told us to run. The voice of the alien woman echoed faintly through the corridor, though she was nowhere to be seen. Do you see, human? The ship remembers not just me. It remembers you. It feeds on what you carry inside. Reyes stepped closer, his hollow eyes glowing faintly gold. You could have saved me. Instead, you saved yourself. Daniel's chest tightened, but he forced his jaw to harden. You're not real. You're nothing but this ship trying to break me. He raised his weapon, but the figure didn't flinch. Instead, more shadows gathered behind Reyes. Faces emerged from the dark, faces Daniel knew, men and women he had fought beside, people he had lost. They reached out to him, their voices blending in a chorus of blame. You failed us. You ran. You left us behind. Daniel staggered back a step, their voices hammering into his skull. His vision blurred, the walls twisting around him, the weight of guilt, of memory pressed down on his chest until he could barely breathe. But then something inside him pushed back. No, he said through gritted teeth. I didn't run. I fought. I survived. And I'll keep surviving. Voices screamed, filling the corridor with sound that shook his bones. The figures lunged, their hollow eyes blazing, their hands reaching. Daniel roared, firing his weapon, light and thunder filling the narrow space. The illusions shattered like glass, the fragments scattering into sparks that faded into the air. Silence fell, Daniel stood trembling, smoke rising from the barrel of his weapon. His breathing was ragged, his body shaking from the effort of holding on. The alien woman's voice slid through the silence, calm and steady. Interesting. Others broke so quickly, but you fight even your own ghosts. Daniel lowered his weapon, sweat dripping down his face. Because they're mine, not yours. For the first time, her voice sounded softer, almost curious. Perhaps you are more than prey. The corridor shifted again, the walls melting into a new shape. Daniel steadied himself, ready for whatever came next. He knew the ship wasn't finished with him. He knew the woman wasn't finished either. But deep inside, he felt something change. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was resisting. And the ship didn't like it. Daniel moved deeper into the ship, his boots thudding against the floor. The corridor twisted again, pulling him into another chamber. This one was vast and circular, its ceiling lost in shadow. Strange pillars rose like the bones of giants, etched with glowing runes that pulsed faintly with life. At the center stood the alien woman. She waited for him as if she had known exactly where he would come out. Her golden eyes glowed brighter now, reflecting the faint shimmer of the runes. "You resisted the ghosts," she said softly. "That is rare. Most humans collapse when their own guilt devours them. But you bite back." Daniel's weapon stayed raised, though his arm felt heavy. "You keep throwing tricks at me. What's next?" She smiled faintly, stepping closer. "Not a trick. A truth." The runes along the pillars flared, and suddenly the chamber was no longer empty. The space filled with movement, shapes pulling themselves from the walls. They were tall, armored figures, their forms sleek and terrible, weapons fused into their limbs. Unlike the broken remnants he had fought earlier, these were whole, polished, perfect. Daniel's chest tightened. These were not corpses reanimated. These were soldiers. Soldiers from her time. "They were my guard," she whispered. "My champions. They swore to protect me until the end. And when death came, they swore again. To me, forever." The soldiers stepped forward in unison, their weapons glowing with alien fire. Their eyes burned the same molten gold as hers, but their movements were smooth, disciplined, terrifying. Daniel clenched his jaw. He knew this was no illusion. These were real. Somehow she had preserved them, bound them to the ship, just as she was bound. "Why show me this?" Daniel asked, circling slowly, keeping his weapon trained on them. "Because," she said, her voice soft but filled with pride, "you are strong. Stronger than the ones before. I want to see how far you can go." Her words echoed in his head as the first soldier charged. Daniel dodged, the ground shaking beneath the blow as its weapon smashed into the floor. He rolled, fired a shot, and the blast scorched the armor but barely slowed it. Another came at him from the side. He barely ducked the strike, feeling the heat of the blade as it sliced the air above him. He fired again, aiming at joints, weak points. Sparks flew, but the soldier pressed on. The battle turned brutal. Every move Daniel made was survival, dodging, striking, firing until his weapon grew hot in his hand. Sweat poured down his face. His muscles screamed, but he refused to stop. The alien woman stood watching, her expression unreadable. At times, he thought he saw cruelty in her smile. Other times, something else, admiration. "You are different," she whispered to herself, though the ship carried her words to him. "You fight as though every moment matters, even when the odds crush. You do not yield." "Why?" Daniel spat blood from a cut on his lip. He didn't answer her. He didn't have the breath. He only fought harder, throwing himself into the storm, refusing to fall. At last, one soldier stumbled. He struck at its leg, blasting it point blank until the armor gave way. The figure collapsed with a hiss, twitching before falling still. The others hesitated just for a moment, and Daniel seized it. He roared, pushing forward with everything left in him, tearing through them with furious precision. One by one they fell, their golden eyes dimming, their weapons fading to silence. When the last soldier collapsed, Daniel dropped to one knee, his chest heaving. His weapon shook in his hand. The alien woman stepped closer, her golden eyes softening. She studied him for a long moment before speaking. "You are human," she said quietly, "and yet, you are more. Your kind should not survive what I throw at you, but you do." Again and again. Daniel looked up at her, sweat and blood streaking his face. That's what it means to be human. We don't stop. Ever. For the first time, her smile faded, not into cruelty, but into something else. Something fragile. Her gaze lingered on him with an emotion Daniel couldn't name. The chamber was silent after the battle, broken only by Daniel's ragged breathing. The bodies of her fallen guards lay scattered, glowing eyes dimming into nothing. Smoke curled up from the scorched floor where his weapon fire had torn through alien steel. The alien woman stepped closer, her movements slow, deliberate. Her golden eyes no longer blazed with cruel amusement. Instead, they studied him carefully, as though she was trying to understand something she had never seen before. "You should not have survived them," she whispered. "They were my best, my champions. I forged them to be perfect, and yet, you stood alone against them and endured." Daniel forced himself back to his feet, his weapon still steady in his grip. "I told you," he said through gritted teeth. "Humans don't stop." Her lips curved faintly, but it wasn't her usual cruel smile. This one was softer, almost sad. She tilted her head, strands of dark hair falling across her face. "Do you know how long it has been since I heard a voice? Answer me?" she asked quietly. "Centuries, human. Centuries of silence, of bones, of hunger. Do you think I laugh because I am cruel? No. I laugh because I am broken." Her words caught him off guard. For a moment he saw not the predator who had mocked him when he entered, but a queen left alone in her tomb, clinging to fragments of who she once was. "You feed on whoever comes here," Daniel said, his voice hard, but not without sympathy. "That isn't survival, that's being trapped." Her golden eyes flickered. "Trapped," she repeated softly. "Yes, perhaps I am. Bound to this ship, bound to the memories of my fall, every scream, every face, every death. It is all I have left, and yet, now you stand before me. A voice that does not beg, a will that does not break." She turned away for a moment, her hands brushing the glowing runes on a nearby pillar. The metal pulsed faintly under her touch, as though responding to her sorrow. "Do you hate me, human?" she asked without looking back. "For what I am, for what I have done?" Daniel hesitated. He thought of the remnants, the illusions, the endless cruelty of this place, but he also thought of the loneliness in her voice, the centuries she had endured in silence. "I don't hate you," he said finally, "but I won't let you destroy me either." Her head turned slowly, her golden eyes meeting his. For the first time, her gaze held no mockery, only curiosity. "Strange. Others cursed me, begged me, hated me. But you refuse both fear and hate. You stand." Daniel tightened his grip on his weapon, because that's what we do. That's what makes us human. Her lips trembled, almost forming a smile, but she looked away quickly, hiding it. She drew in a long breath and lifted her chin, her regal composure returning. "Then the ship will decide," she said, her voice steadier now. "You have faced my ghosts, my soldiers, my hunger, but one trial remains. If you survive, perhaps—" She paused, her golden eyes flickering with something unspoken. "Perhaps I will let you leave." The chamber shifted. The runes along the walls blazed, flooding the room with harsh golden light. The floor trembled, cracking open to reveal a spiraling descent into darkness. The air roared with heat, like the breath of a furnace. Daniel braced himself, sweat dripping from his brow. His body ached, but his spirit burned brighter. The alien woman gestured toward the opening, the heart of the ship. "No one has reached it and lived. If you can, then maybe." Maybe you are more than human. Daniel looked down into the abyss. Then he looked back at her. I don't need to be more. Being human is enough. He stepped forward, his figure swallowed by the glow as the ship prepared its final test. The descent into the ship's heart felt endless. Daniel gripped the ladder carved into the alien metal, the glow from below washing his face in gold and red. The heat grew stronger with every step, like he was climbing into the lungs of a living beast. His weapon hung at his side, heavy but ready, while his other hand clenched the rung so tightly his knuckles turned white. At last, the passage opened into a cavernous chamber. The sight forced him to pause. The heart of the ship was alive. Vast sphere of pulsing light floated in the center, suspended by chains thicker than trees. Energy poured through it, filling the chamber with a deep, steady rhythm that sounded like a heartbeat. Runes burned across the walls, shifting with every pulse. The air shimmered with heat, and Daniel's skin prickled with static. The alien woman appeared behind him, though he hadn't heard her climb down. She stood at the edge of the abyss, her golden eyes reflecting the light of the core. This is where it began, she said softly. This is where the ship bound itself to me, where my soul and its memory became one. Do you feel it, human? It hungers. Daniel stepped forward cautiously, sweat beading on his forehead. What does it want? Her gaze sharpened. It wants to see if you are worthy. It wants to break you as it broke all the others. The ground shook. The chains rattled and the sphere flared brighter. Shapes began to crawl from the light. Creatures born of fire and shadow, their forms shifting like smoke but with claws sharp enough to gleam. They hissed, their voices blending into a chorus that pierced his ears. Daniel raised his weapon. His body screamed with exhaustion, but his will held firm. He had survived the ghosts, the soldiers, even his own past. He would survive this too. The first creature lunged. He fired, the blast tearing through its body, but it reformed instantly, smoke swirling back into shape. Another clawed at him from the side, forcing him to roll across the floor. His weapon was powerful, but here it was useless. These things weren't flesh. The alien woman's voice cut through the chaos. This is not a battle of weapons. This is a battle of will. The ship feeds on weakness, on doubt. If you break, it wins. If you hold, it yields. Daniel clenched his jaw, forcing himself to focus. The creatures swarmed, their bodies twisting into horrors from his memory. Faces of the dead. Monsters, from old wars, even shadows of himself. They whispered as they attacked. You are nothing. You will die here. Forgotten. You cannot fight forever. Daniel dropped to one knee, his weapon nearly slipping from his hand. The voices pressed against his skull like knives. For a moment he wanted to give in, to let the ship take him, to end the endless struggle. But then he thought of Earth, of the people who had believed in him, of every step that had led him here, every fight he had won, every time humanity had risen when the galaxy expected it to fall. He roared, forcing himself back to his feet. I am human, he shouted, his voice echoing through the chamber. And we don't break. The creatures lunged again, but this time, when his weapon fired, the blast tore them apart completely. The smoke shattered, the whispers fading. The sphere trembled, its light flickering wildly as if recoiling from his defiance. The alien woman's golden eyes widened. She stared at him with something close to awe. Impossible, she whispered. The ship listens to you. Daniel stood, tall, chest heaving, weapon smoking in his grip. No, he said, it doesn't listen to me. It listens to the truth. The chamber shook violently, the chains rattling like thunder. The heart of the ship flared with blinding light, as though it was about to make its final decision, and Daniel knew the end was near. The chamber shook, like the world itself was tearing apart. The chains holding the glowing sphere rattled violently, sparks falling like rain. The light pulsed brighter and brighter until Daniel could barely see. The heat was unbearable, but he stood his ground, weapon steady, breath sharp in his chest. The alien woman watched from the edge, her golden eyes wide, her voice caught between fear and awe. No one has ever reached this far. No one has ever defied the heart. Daniel gritted his teeth, his voice cutting through the roar of the chamber. Then maybe it's time someone did. The shadows surged one last time, pouring out of the sphere in a storm of claws and teeth. They rushed him in endless waves, whispering lies, screaming curses. But this time he didn't waver. He didn't fire blindly. He stood tall, his weapon raised, his will unshaken. "I am human," he shouted, his voice carrying over the storm. "I fight because I choose to. I live because I refuse to die. You will not break me." His words thundered through the chamber. The sphere cracked, its surface splitting like glass. The shadows shrieked and dissolved, their forms torn apart by the force of his defiance. The runes across the walls flared white-hot, then went dark. The heart of the ship collapsed inward, its chains snapping with a deafening roar. Energy blasted through the chamber, knocking Daniel to his knees. He shielded his eyes as the light swallowed everything. Then silence. When the light faded, the chamber was still. The sphere was gone, leaving only broken chains swaying in the heavy air. Daniel pushed himself to his feet, his chest heaving, sweat and blood covering his face. The alien woman stood across from him, her eyes no longer blazing gold but dim, almost human. Her body trembled, and for the first time she looked uncertain. "You," she whispered, her voice shaking. "You did what none could. The ship, my prison, it answered you. It listened." Daniel lowered his weapon, though he kept his eyes on her. "I told you we don't stop. That's what it means to be human." Her lips parted, but no laughter came. Instead, something else filled her eyes. Something he had not expected. Respect. Even sorrow. For centuries I ruled through fear. I mocked, I devoured, I commanded. But you changed it. You changed me. She stepped closer, her voice softer now. "You could kill me. End this. And yet," she trailed off, her eyes searching his face. "I think you will not." Daniel said nothing at first. The silence between them was heavy, but his weapon slowly lowered to his side. "I came here to survive, not to destroy." Her golden eyes shimmered faintly, as if tears threatened. She nodded once, a sharp gesture of acceptance. "Then go. Leave this place. The ship will no longer hold you." Daniel hesitated. "What about you?" She smiled faintly, and for once, it was not cruel. "I am bound. My time ended long ago, but perhaps with you something of me will live on. Remember that even a queen who laughed at death could be humbled by a human." The chamber shook again, but this time it was not violent. It was fading. The ship itself was crumbling, its power finally spent. Daniel turned, climbing back toward the surface as the ruins groaned and cracked around him. When he reached the outside, the storm had broken. The dead world was silent, the wreck of the ship sinking slowly into the ground like a tomb at last sealed. Daniel stood alone under the fading light, scarred, exhausted, but alive. He looked back once, imagining her golden eyes watching him still, then turned and walked into the storm. He had stepped into a derelict ship and faced a voice that claimed to have eaten men centuries ago. But in the end, it was not the ship that broke him. It was he who broke the ship, and that was the story he would carry, the story of a human who refused to fall.